Yes, hello Mr. Abbas.
Hello.
Mr. Abbas, what do you think lies ahead for Pakistan? Pakistan had many radicalist groups with links to Al-Qaeda and Taliban, and the sectarian violence in the country doesn't seem to be lessening. What do you think can be done to reduce this culture of radicalism and separatism? As you know, Islam is the religion of peace, completely free from all forms of radicalism. What do you think can be done to give this culture to the Pakistanis?
I would thank you very much for this very important question. This is kind of on the headlines everywhere in the world. This is a major concern. I would start by saying that we need to be clear about two things before even we jump into this topic. One is that about 65 years ago, when Pakistan had come into being, the foundational phase of the country was all managed by and run by very progressive leaders. Muhammad Ali Jinnah, Iqbal. In fact, in my last visit to Turkey, I had seen the name of one of the major roads again named after Mr. Dr. Muhammad Iqbal, who was a very progressive philosopher. So the founding fathers wanted a progressive and democratic state, and they had said so very explicitly in 1940s, and especially after the creation of the country. The initial foundation was also based on kind of pluralistic and very progressive principles. That is one thing I want to refer to. So there's a strong foundation and basis within the state of that progressive democratic orientation. The second thing is, unfortunately, Pakistan and some of the other countries in the region had seen this environment of war and conflict. And I want to refer to this and emphasize it because this is relevant to many other countries today in the world. All the countries which are located in any circle of violence or war gets influenced, even if the war is not taking place in your home, if it is taking place in your vicinity, that damages. And that's what happened with the Afghan war. That is what happened with some of the other conflicts, even the Iraq conflict. For instance, people say that this modern curse of suicide bombing, this is what Al-Qaeda and Taliban had learned from those militants who were operating in Iraq in 2004 and 5. Before that, the Afghan Mujahideen, for instance, or Taliban, they had fought long wars in 1980s and even 1990s. Never ever there was a single suicide bombing attack. This was a new technique introduced by Al-Qaeda and some of the other terrorist groups which started having an influence. Now I come to the present. This I just wanted to explain as a context. In the last 3-4 years, Pakistan has gone through a terrible phase. If that explains, just gives you a hint of this, about 45 to 50,000 people dead in terrorist attack, including those terrorists or extremists. Over 300 suicide attacks. So many of the terrorist training centers in the Pakistan-Afghanistan border region which were destroyed, and there were others which are coming up again and again. So in the last 3-4 years, turbulence, violence became a normal. However, this remains, I will not say completely isolated phenomena, but this remains associated with 3 or 4 extremist or radical or terrorist groups. And what Pakistan needs to do is, in my view, is more emphasis or more use of 2 things. One, civilian law enforcement mechanisms. Because military action, which we have seen, it's not that Pakistan military has not done anything. They, I think, went out of their way. They have lost 5,000 soldiers. But militaries operate the rule of law, the justice system, that's just kept in cold storage. And I'm not saying that's the military operations are the worst of options. There are situations when military operations are needed. But if this is military option is the only way you are dealing with the situation, and you are using military option or use of force in a sustained, in a long-term way, it becomes problematic. Pakistan needs one civilian law enforcement mechanism. Why I argue that? So that ordinary people can see that if you declare a person as a terrorist, you have enough evidence against that person you take that to a court of law, and all those sympathizers of such terrorists can see that, okay, if you are going to opt for a radical path and you'll take law into your own hands, this is the end result. Either you're hanged, depending on the laws of your country, or you spend the rest of your life in jail. That's one issue Pakistan. The second is, honestly, the degeneration of religious political thought in Islam is a major issue. There are so many new religious groups which have played a role in radicalizing religious thought. And there is no check. There's no one, there's no, I'm not suggesting an authority on the old style, the kind of mufti or in that pattern. There's no pope in Islam, and I think that is for good reason in a way. But there have to be some efforts or some mechanisms or some institutions that those kind of extremist kind of thinking, which uses Islam, which uses Islamic terminology, which uses Islamic vocabulary, and they have a gun in their hands as well. They argue with you based on saying you are with us or against us. And they argue that this is the religious notion. Unless you believe in these principles of Islam, you are outside the domain of Islam. That kind of thinking, even by a small, tiny minority, that has in some ways hijacked the Islamic progressive, pluralistic, peaceful discourse. Unless that is changed, and that can be changed in my assessment through education. And I'm not saying it for rhetorical reasons. I think in a country, if you spend, let's say I'm giving an example, every year you spend $1 billion on arms and armaments, and you spend $1 million on education, the results will be in front of you.
Exactly.
Not investing in healthcare and in job opportunities and in education, and there's a huge group of people who remain isolated from the mainstream system. The radicals provide them adventurous life. The radicals provide them a new way of life which gives justification for they being poor, which tells them to take up arms and revolt against the system, and tell them a few verses or few ahadith out of context with wrong translations, and that inspires them, give them a new lifestyle. And that is what is leading to extremism. To cut that chain, to cut this line of thinking, you'll have to, all Muslim countries and all countries of the world, I should say, any countries, because the good principles are for everyone, to invest more in education than than acquiring weapons, to invest more in healthcare rather than lawlessness or chaos.
I think, this is the most, sophisticated and transparent, let's say, thoughts for the mirror, let's say, that is, we can understand the Pakistan. It was quite detailed. Thank you.